Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. It's Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And we would love to invite you to visit badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Check out our sponsor page and see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are also on Patreon. And we started this fun thing on Patreon, which I don't even think Dianne knows that I started. Of like thinking of episodes that we might do in the future and then having people like contribute, having like people on Patreon like contribute like, you know, ideas and questions and their opinions. And oh my God, my cat just knocked something over. I don't know what it was. Oh, I think he pulled the whole curtain down. Okay, anyway. So yeah, you could join us over there. Click the link at the top of the show notes to check out the different tiers. We have mini podcasts and extra episodes and Zoom Hangouts every month. Mm-hmm. And we're also still hosting our ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet, stars, written reviews, anything you can. Take a screenshot, send it to us at badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards that you can spread around your community. And include your address in the email. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
I do, for sure. It says, I am so glad that I found this podcast. I'm a huge history nerd and I love the episode about formula marketing. And I am now very interested in reading the politics of breastfeeding. More importantly, though, I have had anxiety since college and having a baby has rocked my world and turned it upside down. I did not find this podcast until about 3 months postpartum. I wish I had found it sooner because I struggled hard with breastfeeding at the beginning and had a lot of issues. I even went to multiple lactation consultants and one of them had me triple feed, which was unsustainable. Eventually, my baby figured it out, and I am so happy that we get to continue our breastfeeding journey. I wanted to breastfeed so bad, and I am so glad that it eventually worked out. Thank you for being friends that are reassuring me as I continue.
I'm related to that. A lot of anxiety. Interest in the history of formula. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, I love that she said she wanted to read The Politics of Breastfeeding. That is an amazing book. So if anybody out there is, hasn't listened to those episodes, definitely check it out. But that book is really good and it talks a lot about.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's so angering and infuriating and so interesting.
It really is. It's very interesting. But yeah, I'm glad you guys figured it out. And sorry about the triple feeding thing. Hate it. But I am really glad. And thank you so much for sending that in for us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for listening.
Yes. And I feel you on the anxiety. That's a really, that's a complicated thing to add into new parenthood.
But, nobody really talks about, nobody says you might struggle when this baby's born.
Nobody says anything like that.
No.
And like the level of struggle for nobody to say anything is, it's not like you just, it's like, oh, just a little bit of a hiccup. Like it's intense.
Yeah.
And nobody says anything. It's just not, it's I'm suspicious. I mean, like our healthcare system has no time for mental health.
Oh, it's
like they're not. I told that story that when I had my pap smear recently and I went to a new place and they had all these signs everywhere of how they were going to give me this questionnaire because our mental health is, priority and whatever. And signs everywhere. Warning, we're going to give you this assessment. It's your insurance will cover it. No, nothing happened.
Yeah.
There was no assessment.
I mean, really is.
I should have asked, but like, I don't know. I wasn't in any situation where I needed help with my mental health. So it didn't occur to me until I left. I was like, wait a minute. There were all those signs. And I was so happy to see the signs. I was like, oh my God, cool. They're like, they're on it. No,
they're not. Nobody ever asked me anything when I had my kids.
No.
And I was such a blaringly obvious hot mess. I don't know how anybody didn't like commit me somewhere. Like it just really was insane. I mean, it just.
Yeah. I mean, I think people could tell that I was a hot mess as well. And I don't think anybody knew what to do.
Yeah.
You know, nobody. Yeah. No one knew what to do.
No. Nobody had any idea.
Nobody knows what to do.
And the poor parents are just left to feel like that.
Yeah. And then you feel like you're alone when it's like the complete
Exactly.
opposite. Absolutely. Every single person feels that way.
Unbelievable.
Well,
but today
yeah. It's a good segue.
Talk about another thing.
Another thing nobody talks about.
Yeah. Another thing that nobody talks about that we got a really cool message about.
Yes. I'll read the message.
Okay.
I would love it. I would love if you would mention breastfeeding aversion more. I feel really invalidated whenever I hear a lactation consultant say that after a few months it will be totally comfortable. You won't feel it, etc. I'm 9 months in and my skin still crawls the whole time. I definitely feel something and it isn't comfortable. My lactation consultant diagnosed me with BAR.
Which I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I forgot to
do a little Googling while you read.
While I finish this.
Okay.
Baby is thriving, getting plenty. It's not a latch issue, but I worried for months that it was because of the information I was getting that I shouldn't feel anything. It should be comfortable and I should love it. Thank you for all you do. Yeah, nursing aversion is really something that like a lot of people don't even know about. Even the professionals. Did you find anything?
I did. All it stands for is breastfeeding aversion response.
Oh.
I'd never really heard of it.
Oh, so the lactation consultant felt like she was experiencing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, so what we have a couple of episodes about this. They're older now. I feel like we have a wonderful episode that we interviewed a woman named Melissa Morns. She's an Australian researcher with a university. And she did, her and her team did a research study on nursing aversion. And she wrote a paper, Women Who Experience Feelings of Aversion While Breastfeeding, a meta-ethnographic review. And she goes into, obviously, a lot of detail about, she gathered, let's see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come up with the amount of people that she interviewed. She interviewed, a bunch of moms, to use the scientific term. If I'm scrolling through here, I'll find out. Actually, I don't even think I think it was a review of the literature that was out.
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
both.
maybe.
Let's see. So her findings, she talks about feelings of aversion during breastfeeding were described as visceral and overwhelming, leading to feelings of shame and inadequacy. The synthesis identified 5 findings, a central conceptual category of, it's such a strong feeling of get away from me. Which by the way, I experienced very extreme nursing aversion that went on from my pregnancy with Jack. No, sorry. My pregnancy with Exley while I was still nursing Jack. Jack was about to turn 3 when Exley was born. And late in my pregnancy, I was still nursing Jack, and it kicked in like one day. I remember I was sitting in a chair and it kicked in, and it was what they say. It was visceral and it was overwhelming, and it was, thank God I had read about it, because as soon as this feeling washed over me, and I was like, oh my God, this has to be that thing. This is that thing. And it was like, it's such a strong feeling of get away from me. Like as soon as you latch on, It doesn't even have to be like you can get, okay, let me finish I have so many things to say. They, as soon as you latch on, it's different from the dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which
Yes.
is happening during letdown. The nursing aversion is like latching, it's very strong. Unlatch, it's a relief. And I felt it's a mixture of anxiety, rage, and you're feeling like your skin is crawling, like there's bugs crawling on you, like it's emotional, it's physiological, like you can feel it in your skin. And it makes like I wanted to like run through a wall, like get up and just run through the nearest wall. Ugh. And also throw my baby across the room. Now, it is not like you don't do that. It doesn't take over your thought process, really. Like, I mean, you talk to yourself, like, what am I? I'm crazy. What's going on? But in most cases, you are not, dangerous unless there's other things that are happening. I mean, there are things like postpartum psychosis and things where people need intervention, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the feeling of aversion, of it's uncomfortable. I feel horrible when this baby is latched on. I feel like I want to push their face off of my breast and get relief. And they, let's see, 4 key metaphors. I do it because I feel it's best for my baby. I can't control those feelings. I should be able to breastfeed my son and enjoy it. And I'm glad I did it. So the theme is it's overwhelming. It's awful. It's horrible. However, I know this is best for my baby and I really want to do it. I feel shame and guilt about it and I can't control it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm glad I did it. And it's like I can relate to, I agree. That's what it is. It's so weird. It's like, this is horrible. I'm glad I did that. But I mean, yeah.
But I mean, she sounds like the person that wrote into us.
Yeah.
It sounds like people told her it would go away.
Yeah.
Because she said, like, it's not going away. And it's not going to go away, probably. Right. It's just what it is. And she was told, like, oh, you'll start to feel better.
Yeah.
But
I think that's what a lot of people hear is like, okay, well, yeah, it's bad. It'll pass. It's just one of those things. Like it's going to go, it'll move through. And I think sometimes it does. I think sometimes maybe people experience it for a while and then it goes away. That was not at all how it was for me. It kicked in one day and it never left. And here is more interesting things that people have also said in this research article and people I've talked to. It would only happen with Jack and not with Exley. When I was nursing Exley, who was my newborn, I didn't feel aversion at all. When I would nurse Jack, my toddler, it was intense.
Wild.
Which is consistent with the experience or that we see with species like primates and other mammals that that start to reject their nurslings when they resume their cycle. We see them. You'll see. You could like straight up see like a gorilla just like push their baby. Like the baby will come up like, and they're just like, meh, just like push it down. They're like, nope, not now.
It's kind of how we feel.
Yeah, which is exactly how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So So there's like, I don't know what, like, this is a phenomenon. So here's the other thing. This is something that only affects the breastfeeding parent, which is generally like a woman. So therefore, and it has to do with a woman's uncomfortable feelings, right? It's like
Right.
she's feeling uncomfortable. So therefore, there's very little research into it. We don't really know what it is. I mean, if it was something that was affecting, a man and something like that, we would have a ton of research around it. But we've got nothing on this because, it'll pass. It's fine. Just get over it. So we don't know, exactly what's happening. There's thoughts that that's mainly hormonal, which I would agree with because I think it's exacerbated around people's cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The return of your cycle can make it worse. Your hormones are in absolute constant fluctuation throughout pregnancy and nursing. So all of these changes, it makes sense that it would be hormonal. The other aspect of it is, which I just want to make sure I talk about a lot of things so that people feel like validated when they're feeling these things, is that sometimes it feels like sexual arousal while your baby is breastfeeding, which leads to all kinds of uncomfortable feelings, which shame and guilt and disgust. Which also is a clue, I think, that it's that hormones are related because, this is all connected. And these things we had Nikki on the podcast, right? She's a friend of mine who she's very open about the her childhood sexual abuse story. And that's such an old episode. We got to dig it up and pull that out. It's so good. She's so amazing. She does a lot of work to help people nowadays. And she talks about how just breastfeeding in general was so difficult for her, because she had experienced all this trauma. So people who have this kind of trauma in their history are going to have, just with breastfeeding alone, such more complicated feelings around it. And then if they're experiencing nursing aversion, even more. It's even more of a hurdle or a struggle. So these are just things to kind of take into consideration while you're experiencing these things. It does not mean that you are sexually aroused by breastfeeding. That is not what's happening. Your hormones are reacting to whatever. They're reacting. They're just going all over the place. They're like here and here. You're upset. And now you're sexually aroused. Now you feel like running through a wall. And now you feel anxious. And now there's just this whole wheel, like it's, the wheel of fortune of feelings.
I did find an article or a research study that Melissa Morns did as well. She seems to be spearheading everything that has to do with breastfeeding aversion.
She's really like trying to push forward through.
And this was just last year. And it says she looked at 210 participants, predominantly were aged between 25 and 35 years old, were in a relationship and had one child. BAR, again, that's breastfeeding aversion response, was more commonly experienced when breastfeeding the firstborn child, breastfeeding while pregnant, or tandem feeding. The feelings of aversion were experienced by most respondents throughout the feed while the child was latched. More than half of participants reported that BAR had caused them to end breastfeeding sessions before their child was ready to stop feeding. Not wean, but before, like during that breastfeeding session, they were like, okay, we need to be finished.
Yes.
It didn't say that it made them wean. Almost half of the participants reported receiving no support from a healthcare provider. So it really, I think this is just something that is just so unknown and, like we said in the beginning, not talked about very much. Just like, not breastfeeding aversion. What did you? Just like dysphoric milk ejection reflex. This is very different from that, but that's something else that you have like really uncomfortable feelings around breastfeeding that nobody really knows what to do about.
Yes.
So it's just like another arm to breastfeeding that people are just kind of like clueless about.
Yeah.
Which is also adds to the frustration. It's like, well, what do you do? Like when you try to tell your healthcare provider, yes, I'm breastfeeding, but I feel horrible while I'm doing it. I mean, they're going to tell you to wean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they will. They don't know much about breastfeeding. They sure as hell don't know anything about breastfeeding aversion.
No, it's, and you know, like we said, this might not be, you might not want to wean, but it's nice to know that there's an answer to what you're feeling.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because, you know, we'll get to some of the ways of managing it, but there are no ways of just curing it.
Right.
And getting out of it. Like it's not, there's things that can make it worse that you can avoid. Oh, and some things that you can't at all. But there's more description, more of people's quotes on how they describe it, which I just think is really interesting for people to have somebody put words to these really intense feelings they've never had before. One person says, it's a sudden rush that makes me want to pull my son off immediately and want to run away. It just kind of feels, I don't know, like I never want to be touched again. Describe it as a physical, reflexive sensation that is intense and overwhelming, like the creepy crawlies, can't stay still, toe curling, throat tightening, and gut wrenching. I feel like my skin was crawling. Another person says, nearing the start of my cycle, I experience aversions that are quite strong. During this time, I have extreme agitation. Women stated that the long duration of physical contact required to breastfeed was difficult to successfully maintain while experiencing feelings of aversion while breastfeeding. I end up having to take my son off as I can't stand it any longer. And this is something where I started to work on boundaries when I got after Exley was born. And that is something that I do regret. I don't have a lot of regrets around breastfeeding, but I do regret not working on boundaries with Jack before Exley got here, because once Exley got here and I was working with Jack on boundaries, it was just sort of like he was dealing with two things, around boundaries and a new brother. And I wish I had prepared him for that a bit more. So if you're in a situation where you can do that, I definitely suggest working on boundaries, and work on boundaries anyway, because if you want to sustain that breastfeeding relationship through the nursing aversion, I think boundaries is how I was able to do it. Just keeping those sessions short. You know, we have episodes on boundaries where you can how to shorten the sessions and things like that.
You can't do that unless your baby's at least a year old.
Well, that's true. That's true. If you have if you're experiencing aversion with an infant, yeah, you can't work on boundaries. And that's
got to feel so disappointing, because there's so many people that go into, or that are in their pregnancy and they're learning about breastfeeding and they're reading about breastfeeding and they want to breastfeed their baby, and that is their plan for feeding. And then it turns out like this. And that must feel so hugely disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I never had to experience that with a baby that was under a year. So yeah, that must be awful. I can't even. You must just feel like you had your whole experience stolen from you.
Right.
Like this wasn't. You must feel like you never really got to experience breastfeeding. Because if it's horrible every time you latch your baby on.
I know.
Oh, that sucks a lot. So, I mean, there are so many more things to talk about in this article, and I really love this because it's very detailed and all of that. But I think we should move on to some of the things that we can do.
Yeah, what can we do to help with nursing aversion? So what can you do to kind of take some of that feeling, not take it away because it's probably not going to go away, but deal with
Yeah.
it while you are nursing your baby.
Yeah. So I felt like if I was not hydrated enough, that was something that would make it worse. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just stay really like overhydrated if you can. Um, Obviously being tired is going to make it worse, which is a ridiculous thing to say to a parent because we're tired all the
You're always
time.
tired.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, just expect on the days that you're more tired that it's going to be worse. And I don't know, try all the things that you can to get more sleep, like the bed sharing and the napping with the baby and not feeling guilty about that, and use paper plates so there's no dishes. And yeah. Let's see. I found distraction to be one of my main coping things.
Mm-hmm.
And not really in like a healthy way, in a way that would really distract me, like pinching a different part of my body, biting my lip, pinching my hand, pulling my hair. Especially if it was a session where like I was trying to get Jack to sleep or something and I didn't want to just like, he's almost asleep. I don't want to like take him off and then ruin the whole thing and then have to nurse even longer. So I would literally like lay down with him, open my phone. I'd either, twist my hair and pull at it, pinch myself. Or another good thing was to open Facebook and go to some sort of, go to a neighborhood group, go wherever the arguments are, and read those and get involved. It's like watching, watch the train wrecks on the internet. They can be very distracting.
It's very distracting.
Yes.
Yeah. Time will fly by in a minute for
Yes.
that.
Yeah. I mean, and people will argue literally about anything on the internet, so you can always find something. I mean, people will argue in my neighborhood groups just about like, I don't even know. I can't even think of an example. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I can't stop reading it, and it's funny.
Watch it. I know. Watch a TV show, like something that you can just, something that is distracting to you that you
watch,
that you want to do.
Some like a murder documentary, if that's your thing. I also, for me, it was much worse when I was nursing both. When I was tandem nursing, if I was nursing both of them at the same time, I could not do that. That was not possible. I had to nurse one at a time. And there was no way I could not handle that. And it's amazing because, I made it through, and I'm glad that I nursed my kids as long as I did. And I nursed my kids longer than most people do, and you don't need to. Jack was 6.5 and Exley was 5. And that's a really long time to nurse. You don't have to nurse that long if you don't want to. You can wean whenever you want. But I did it with boundaries. And I was about to say something else. Oh, to this day. So Exley is 10. So I haven't breastfed him in 5 years. To this day, not just him, anybody. If anybody like leans over, like if he leans on the couch and he leans his head like near my breast, I have to put my hand over my breast. I have to put something in between his face and my boob. Not just my shirt. Like I can feel it, like the feeling.
Physical
I can feel
barrier.
that feeling.
Yeah.
I can feel the nursing aversion feeling if somebody wanders near my breast.
That's wild.
I know. I can
like
also
how strong
express,
our hormones are.
I can also still express something. Just in case anybody's worried about that happens too. But yeah, it's so intense that I can't And it can come back in at a second's notice.
Mm. So now I really wonder, because this study that I found here, where it says, BAR was more commonly experienced when feeding the firstborn child while pregnant or tandem feeding. So I wonder if it comes back with the second baby for those that experience it with their firstborn.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I really wonder.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, hormones are
they're so wonky.
They're so unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such an element. There's this hint at something deeper too when you're feeling it with a toddler but not with your newborn.
Right.
How can that be hormonal? I mean, I guess it can, because your hormones are adjusting to each time they're latching on. They're changing from minute to minute.
Yeah. So we don't have any magical fixes
no
for
answers for you, except that you're not crazy.
You're not crazy. There's some, research behind it. Not a lot of research, but Melissa Morns is spearheading that, and there is some research behind it. And we know that it's uncomfortable. We know that it's really difficult, and we're here for you for that. But there's not a lot that we can tell you to do. If there's something that could distract you, then definitely, work on that as your mechanism. But it's a really difficult piece to nursing.
Yeah. I think I heard something about magnesium, because everybody's deficient in magnesium or something. I mean, you could try, there's these, I'm sure there's people who are, advertising some sort of supplement about it. Wouldn't necessarily trust that, because people will, if this does become a bigger thing, it'll just become a bigger thing for people to capitalize off of.
Yeah. But we hear you.
But anyway, yeah. Thank you for listening.
Hopefully
that was helpful.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.